Here we go. Let's talk about some macronutrients. Not the if it fits your macros, sorry. But I guess I could touch on that. So if you're not familiar with that term, it's a kind of a, I don't know if you would necessarily call it a diet, but it's a more of a philosophy of eating that would suggest, essentially just suggesting putting macronutrients first, and what you eat doesn't matter as long as it hits those macronutrient numbers. And there's a sliver of truth that makes that really dangerous. Okay, for certain outcomes, if you're just looking at maybe body composition, you're going to be able to get away with that for a little while. But body composition is not a full picture of health. So that's why this is not first for us. This is very important for us to understand, to construct a good diet. But we say real food is the most important thing. And we even put timing in prior to talking about macronutrients, because we can screw up more by prioritizing macronutrients above those other two things. That they all matter, and I'm never going to tell somebody that it doesn't matter. But we have created a little bit of a hierarchy where we teach those things first, and then we get to this issue of macronutrients. And really, just the first one, right? If we fully understand real food, it's going to be hard to make the worst of the worst mistakes with macronutrients, right? So there's a little disclaimer up front. Now, what we say, principle this week. Where did it go? I know off the top of my head. The human body needs to eat mostly higher fat, moderate protein, lower carbohydrate diet in order to survive and thrive. So, first of all, we keep those terms broad like that. That is not a prescription. That's a broad statement. And so when we say higher fat, moderate protein, lower carbohydrate, what those words end up meaning is, if you were to take the percentage of your caloric intake, your total energy intake, and put it on a chart, most of the time we're going to say that the way that should line up is, so if we're dealing with percentages, 100 makes the whole, and if it were 34% fat, 35% fat, whatever. Like if it's 30, right? And the fat was slightly more, right? That's qualifying there. And actually we'll get to this, but I think that's a pretty good prescription for a lot of people. And unless you are a very, very active individual, an athlete, and doing lots of activity, would carbohydrates ever, swing above that? But let's put that on pause. And we'll get into specifics here in a minute. But here's what we're not saying with that. We're not saying everybody should be on a super carbohydrate restricted diet, like a ketogenic diet. That's not what we're saying there. We're saying this statement relative to the standard American diet, which the standard American diet is very low protein. So, and honestly, I have wrestled a little bit lately with our terminology of moderate protein, only because of what it communicates. When we actually chart stuff out, the protein being moderate relative to the total energy intake of all three, like that is right where it should be. But when compared to what people are eating, for the most part, it is a straight up just high protein diet, right? And if we do that well, we're likely going to fall into a pretty good place with everything. Okay, and I'll explain that here in a minute. But yeah, what we're not saying is all fat, right? Chasing fat and doing the keto thing. There are certain situations where I think that is a good idea, especially even like the carnivore approach. I did that myself for a long period of time, and greatly benefited from it for specific reasons. But that's not what we're saying here. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, first question, right? First question I asked this week is, hey, kind of tongue in cheek, are you able to identify macronutrients on your dinner plate yet? Right? And I say yet because it's something we talk about all the time. Is in order to actually dial these things in, we have to understand what macronutrients are to begin with. We need to be able to identify these foods, and at the greatest extent, that would be weighing and measuring things and getting precision. But at a minimum, this is being able to look at foods and know what they are made up of, right? To know that when you're looking at a ribeye and a chicken breast, what are the differences there? They're both meat, right? The assumption there is that there's plenty of protein in both of those. But those are two wildly different foods in a macronutrient sense, right? The ribeye is likely about a 1-to-1 ratio of fat to protein, which gives you, back to my original point here, gives you a lot of fat in the energy consumption sense. Even though it's grams 1-to-1, fat is over twice as dense as protein and carbohydrate, and that's a wildly different food than a chicken breast, which is almost entirely protein. Okay, and here's another one. Looking at a plate full of broccoli and cauliflower, which is a carbohydrate, and looking at a plate full of rice. Okay, both are just carbohydrate sources, and one is significantly more dense than the other. Okay, so we have to learn some of these things in order to, for a really base level and identification type of level, to be able to balance them out, right? So that's definitely point number one. Then question number two. Okay, we'll break these down. We got 3 more questions, and it's hitting all 3 of the macronutrients. So first question regarding balancing these things out. Are you eating 1 gram per pound of goal weight every day? So let's explain goal weight first. So if you are looking to maintain the body composition you have, goal weight would be body weight, right? Like aim for right where you're at, okay? But then whether you're trying to gain or lose, this principle, this wording here still applies. If you're trying to gain weight, okay, where are you aiming at? Aim there, do that. If you're trying to lose weight, we don't want to be eating to body weight. We want to be eating to what our aim is, right? And so this is a great general rule to set our protein. Now, the reason I start with protein is because, again, relative to the standard American diet, this is the one that is like the most off. Okay, when we can when we clean up the real food nature of what we're eating, we do a lot with fat and carbohydrate, right? We don't get the terrible fats, the vegetable and seed oils. We get rid of those. And generally, we're going to get rid of a lot of the massive quantity of carbohydrates in the standard American diet, because those two things often come together. Especially if we're eating primarily like whole foods and not as much packaged and processed foods, we touch those things just as a secondary thing if we're aiming at real food. Okay. But we can still do that and be way off on our protein intake. And so we start here that's one of the reasons. one of the other reasons is, okay, and I'm going to touch on the fat thing here in a second. I'm just going to loop that in here. When we eat protein in the way that nature presents it to us, we eat whole animals, nose to tail. Most of those animals, okay, so you look at a cow, most of the meat that you're going to be getting off of that is meat with high fat content, right? And when you eat that, like, your fat is pretty much taken care of, okay? It's really only when we are intentionally choosing leaner, lower fat cuts, like the chicken breast I already mentioned, that we really need to think separately about fat. If you're eating your ribeyes and your New York strips and even your ground beef, your 80-20 stuff, you don't need to think about adding a ton more fat to that. Cooking in oil's great, right? But it's like you don't necessarily have a super big need unless you're doing something like a extremely low carbohydrate diet where you need to pump up some of the just energy that you're taking in through, higher fat. I'll couch that for a second. Save that for the fat discussion. But protein, right? Time and time again, when I'm helping people kind of dissect what they're eating on a daily basis, man, you got to know this, right? So drawing back to last week's a little bit, talking about timing, we recommend eat meals, not snack and graze all day. And so most people are eating either 2 or 3 meals, okay? And this is really simple. Understand what you need in the day. If you're eating 2 meals, divide that in half. Eat that amount of protein at each meal. If you're eating 3 meals, divide that by 3, okay? This does not need to be super complicated. And that is really what I would say should be like the starting point for anybody trying to really hone in and dial in on their macronutrient intake. Then we fill in outside of that. So moving to carbohydrate. The question is, do you eat enough carbohydrate to fuel your activity level? That's the question. And the subtext in there is also, and no more. Okay. So kind of a secondary question I asked to people was, okay, if we're trying to aim at something here to match our carbohydrate intake with our activity level, how would we know if we are too low and how would we know if we're too high? So if we'll just take somebody who, works most of the day at a desk and, ideally if you've got a job like that, hopefully you're getting up and taking breaks or walking on your lunch or walking with the family after dinner or different things like that. But they are coming into the gym and they've got an hour workout most days of the week. Let's just take that person as an example. Okay, they have some activity that they are trying to fuel with carbohydrate. So if we are too low, there's a certain feeling that you're going to get when you push your body and ask it to do things that are more demanding than sitting on a stool and doing a little video like this. And if that fuel is not on board, then it's almost like staying in a lower gear, right? When you're driving your car. And it's like the power to do the thing you're asking your body to do is just not quite there. Everything is a little harder than it should be, right? That's one of the signs of being a little underfueled when it comes to carbohydrate, okay? And because of that, this is, one of the reasons why I think everybody should be, challenging themselves, or we'll get to the movement principles here of being physically challenged. The more we kind of push to the edges of what we are capable of, our awareness of some of these things is really heightened, right? To know what that feels like, to get some feedback on what you're doing, what you're fueling, and is it hitting the mark or not? Because I've said this a bunch of times. Ideally, I want everybody to be as active as they can, as active as they can manage, and fuel your body for that, right? That's like, until we get to an absolute extreme level where you're working out all the time, right? There's this, natural bell curve here at the very tip of that. Sure, there's going to be some negative side effects of that, but most people don't even have the opportunity to do something like that. So if everybody's just thinking, hey, maximize movement and activity, and eating to that level, we're going to be in a much, much, much better place, right? Rather than, doing as little as possible and still, if that's your situation, we want to match what you're doing there. But I'm going to take the more of both, the more activity and the more food. I'm going to take that every time. So on the flip side of that, how do you know you're eating too many carbohydrates? Well, carbohydrate is your body's preferred energy source. Okay. This is rocket fuel for activity. And your body is also prone to survival tactics. And so when you are giving your body more than it needs on a daily basis, then, hey, it's you got like near infinite deep freezers down in the basement that it can just save that stuff for later, right? This is what we call stored body fat. Okay, this is your body's way of kind of keeping you in a safe place that it's gonna store that energy for later use, right? Your body doesn't know when famine is going to hit, and it's gonna put that stuff away, right? And so this is where, hey, if you're accumulating more body fat, one of the most common things that is happening there is overconsumption of carbohydrate. It's not the only reason, but it's a very, very common one. So those are kind of the two ways that we would see, hey, this is off on one side or the other, right? So do you eat enough carbohydrate to fuel your level of activity? What we would be seeing is you are able to be as active as you can be, and all that activity is to peak performance, right? You're able to do what you know you're capable of, and I would say on a good program you're seeing that improvement, right? And doing so without gaining body weight, right? Kind of a simple idea. That's where we want carbohydrates to be. Then, talked about this a little bit, but last question is, hey, are you eating animal fat or something from the category of fatty fruits every day, right? I say right a lot. I've noticed that. Maybe I should work on it. If you are eating protein, eating animal foods the way nature presents it, I already said this, you're going to get this ratio of fat to protein that is great, and we really don't need to worry about adding additional fats. However, if you are eating a lot of lean meats, I pick on chicken breast all the time because it's the easy one, and a lot of people do eat it. If you are eating that, you should be thinking about fat intake, kind of supplementing that. So think about your, people will make a salad and throw some chicken breast on there, right? I'm conscious about me saying right. That would be the time where you'd want to, use some olive oil on top of that. That's where you'd want to chop up an avocado and throw it on there. If you do well with good forms of dairy, this is where you'd want to throw some good high quality cheese on there. And thinking about kind of supplementing that protein with some good fats. Yeah, having enough fat, super important for your health overall, hormonal health, lots of things going in there. But another reason why fat is important is it's super satiating, super satisfying. You're going to feel fuller longer, right? You're not going to be as hungry, right? Takes longer for your body to digest, and like it's really, really important. Alex has done plenty of episodes talking about the real misinformation, suckers. That fat is something to avoid. It's not, right? Some fats are. We talked about those with eating real food. We do not want to be consuming any vegetable and seed oils. Those are awful for you, but it's not because of the fat content, right? Fat itself is necessary for your life. There are things essential that we consume called essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, and there are no essential carbohydrates, right? When you are in that zero carb state, your body actually has this process of creating the sugar that it needs to be able to function. And it's like, if we looked at the absolute baseline, you can get away. I'm not saying it's a way to thrive long term, but you can survive on consuming absolutely zero carbohydrate. Okay. So hey, fat's important, right? Eat it. All right. Now we've covered some of that. I guess we didn't really touch on quantities of those other ones, but besides the kind of prescriptive gram per pound on the protein, these other two are going to fall in line a lot more with the energy stuff, right? So really, if you're eating good animal products that have fat in them, probably don't need to think about much fat outside of that, and then eat the carbohydrates to fuel your activity. Okay, it can be as simple as doing those two things. All right, moving on. How long have I been on here? Where's my little thing? How's my picture look? Great. Always get to this point where I've gone through those questions and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I've been talking for 20 minutes already. Hey, the Murph stuff. The Murph. Maybe I shouldn't call it the Murph. Murph? I don't know. We are just over a week away. So it is Friday. Monday's in a couple days, and it is 1 week from this coming Monday. I've got a very exciting thing to announce. Via some peer pressure, I threw up some Murph 2024 t-shirts on the website. So if you're a t-shirt wearing person like myself, hey, check out this, another plug here for Costco. Picked up a 3-pack of these this week for $9.99, and I like this shirt. It's not going to be this shirt. It's going to be some thing probably made in China and printed somewhere else and delivered to your door, but it says Murph on it in 2024, and you can check it out at newcity.fitness/store. And then if you're buying it, you better show your butt up here. Not next Monday, the Monday after next, whatever that date is, I've got a calendar, 27, Monday, May 27, for Murph. It's a great time. Likely, I'm going to put this on the record, likely 8 a.m. will be our large group with some little potluck breakfast afterwards. Going on record with that. Official announcement to come, hopefully by Monday. Yeah, we'll get it in. Yeah, other than that, so we've been doing a lot of prep for that in our weekly programming weekly workouts have kind of centered around that because I'm kind of setting that and then building outside of it. Knowing that that's kind of the main thing we're working towards here. But once we are through that, in getting into the summer months here, I've mentioned this, but doing a lot more just raw strength building. Some stuff will feel a little more bodybuilding-ish, and as well as, doing what we can to build a good aerobic base through the summer. Some of you love it, some of you hate it, but running is a phenomenal movement. It's a phenomenal tool for us to use to build that aerobic base, and it's very different than everything else we do in here, like with the rower and the bikes and stuff, because you got to manage your own body weight, right? So it's a very different skill in that regard, very different movement in that regard. And we only got a few months of the year to be able to utilize it, so we'll expect some running. Strength, some bodybuilding, some running, and trying to figure out some ways to help us progress with like gymnastics skills, right? Because a lot of that stuff is very, very skill based, being able to control your body in space. And then still probably once a week hitting a traditional Metcon, staying fresh on just the ability to kind of hurt and suffer like that in that very specific way. But a lot of the other stuff, really prioritizing strength, some real baseline aerobic capacity stuff, including all the running, and sprinkling in some of those gymnastics skills. So it'll be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to these summer months and kind of playing with the programming a little bit, hitting on those things. Okay, cool. I think that might be all for today. Yeah. I like this little angled view. It takes me like 20 seconds less to set it up, not having to center the camera. So